Well, hello, folks. Jeffrey Darty, your Christian whistleblower, ready to jump right into episode number 3 of the Mandela Effect and the Antichrist. I have to tell you, I'm getting so many emails and so many messages from people about this series, tremendous interest in it. And I'm getting so many people saying this is the best video that we've ever heard about this subject. It's the best information that we've ever heard about this subject. I do appreciate that very, very much. And I continue to intend to make a couple more of these at least until we do cover the subject in its entirety. But every time I think I'm finished, something drops into my spirit that we have something else to talk about. And I think that tonight, really with probably with Friday's video, I'll have a very exciting announcement to make about the Mandela effect and these videos and our research and study of them. We can't really go back and recap everything we talk about because that's all we talk about. But we've been asking the question is the Mandela effect the work of the Antichrist? Daniel in chapter 12, verse 4 said that his words were sealed up until the time of the end when many would run to and fro and knowledge would increase. And the other videos I've told you, believe it or not, that Daniel foresaw and foretold the Mandela effect, that Daniel foresaw and foretold that it was the work of the Antichrist. And as hard as it is to believe, a book written 3,000 years ago would detail the unfolding of a modern, a technology-driven effect. An objective look at these texts really leaves little doubts. And we talked about Daniel 7:25 as being the central verse, and we'll continue on that today, that he, and it's universally accepted by researchers and scholars that the he is speaking of the Antichrist. Who the Antichrist is another subject of discussion, and perhaps even the real focus of the Mandela effect. But he will speak out against the Most High. He'll wear down the saints of the Highest One, and he shall think to change times and laws. And we talked about altering is what that means, altering, changing, and even making diverse time, which is, of course, time, making diverse timelines, this talks about. And then it also talks about changing epochs. And we found out in the last couple of shows that an epoch is defined as a period of time in history or in a person's life marked by notable events or particular characteristics. This Antichrist power intends to change time itself and also to change and alter notable events and characteristics of a person's life and history and to create multiple lines of time. This is a perfect definition of what we're currently seeing in the Mandela effect, and this from a man that wrote some 3,000 years ago. And I've been brought to this subject kicking and screaming. Don't like to talk about it. Don't like to be on the latest pop culture, but I have resisted it for quite some time, and I confine myself for the most part to the study of biblical and parabiblical texts. And I'm all about objective empirical history and observations. And it was these things, frankly, that forced me into a deep study of the Mandela effect. And after studying hundreds of videos, hundreds of written presentations on the subject, I have come to the inescapable conclusion that something is indeed happening. Time as we know it, or at least as we remember it, is being changed. There can be no longer any doubt about that. Events that multiple millions of people, me and you included, are no longer what they were. Clearly, time and epochs are being changed, just as Daniel warned. Notable characteristic events of the past are being altered. And just like Daniel warned, times have become diverse. The results of the Mandela effect are, at least temporarily, setting up multiple timelines, as many remember, and others even come forward with tangible evidence and proof of these changes and alterations. We are living in exactly what Daniel prophesied would come. There's no more question remaining. Something is taking place, and the question that screams out in my mind, of course, is why? And as I ponder this and continue to meditate upon the words of Daniel, the answers keep exploding from the pages that he penned, and the base answer lies, not surprisingly, and it continued in full exposition of the verse as we've been looking at. Remember, folks, when you're talking about things biblical, a text without a context is a pretext. And the Hebrew word translated law here in Daniel 7:25 is dath, and that is beyond extraordinary. And let me just show that to you, because I want you to see and I want you to know that I'm not making things up. And again, I want you by osmosis and by instruction here to learn how to use your Bible. Here's Daniel 7:25. He shall think to change times and law. We're going to go up to the interlinear, and we're going to find the word law. Here's laws right here, times and laws. We go ahead and we hit what the word is, and look at it. The word for law is dath. Not ath, but dath. There we go. That's the word for law, and the word for law is dath. Now, those of you that have any knowledge of the ancient study of Kabbalah have automatically had your minds blown just by the mention of dath. But for the rest of you, let's just set the stage. Daniel, of course, is part of the Old Testament, with Genesis, Job, probably the oldest book in the Old Testament. The Old Testament is a Hebrew document. It was written by Jewish people and has come to us in its present form due to the efforts of Jewish scribes over the centuries. Now, as such, it is a thoroughly Jewish document, and it has to be considered as such. Any interpretation that ignores the essential Jewishness of the Old Testament, of the book of Daniel, is faulty. A text without its context, both historical, both cultural, and both textual, is indeed a pretext. Now, a lot of us have at least heard about the tradition of Jewish mysticism known as Kabbalah. And whether you or I personally place any value in it or not, there can be no doubt that Daniel and the other Jewish writers and copiers of the Old Testament certainly did. And suffice it to say that Daniel would have been fully aware of the implications of the language he was using, and have used it with full intention and full knowledge in exactly the fashion that he wished and chose to. And our friends at Wikipedia say this about dath. It says it's a Hebrew word that means knowledge. And in the branch of Jewish mysticism known as Kabbalah, dath is the location or mystical state where all of the sephirots are united as one. Here's what's really important to us. It's the perfected state of infinite sharing. It's where those that would receive and conceal the divine light instead turn around and start sharing and revealing the divine light. They begin to radiate the self-giving divine light, so it's no longer possible to distinguish one from another. Thus, they are one. The divine light is always shining. It has been blocked out, but dath makes it so all humans can see it. Folks, you don't need to know or even care about a Kabbalah to see the incredible significance that Daniel was conveying to us with his inclusion of the word dath. Dath means knowledge. Not only that, it means the perfected state of infinite sharing. It means the perfected state of divine light. It means the perfected state of divine knowledge in its full glory. And it's the recognition by humanity of the continuing shining light of divine light that will make us all one. Dath is the ultimate fulfillment of the great plan of the divine. And it's this dath and its transformational manifestations that this Antichrist is trying to change and alter. And no wonder, because dath is the death of Antichrist. Dath is the death of big-time religion. Dath is the death of the fear and guilt-based control matrix. Dath is the death of the Pauline matrix. Dath is the death of the usurpation and the co-opting of the original message of the Yeshua movement. And since the knowledge of dath is meant to lead humanity into a perfect state of infinite sharing, where we receive all light, even that light which is currently concealed, and where we come into the fullness of divine light, Antichrist must attempt to change and alter such an occurrence. And without getting too deep into Kabbalistic thought as we follow this up, there's widespread agreement among its scholars and its proponents that dath has, over the past few years, begun emerging. Dath is emerging, and this, of course, would lead to the benefits of dath shining in all humanity. And that's what the Antichrist must prevent. And according to the prophet Daniel, 3,000 years ago, the Mandela effect, described in perfect specific language, ascribed to the work of the Antichrist, and shown to specifically be intended to block, to usurp, to water down the emergence of death knowledge. You don't want to miss Friday. Be here, because believe it or not, we're just getting started. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, your Christian whistleblower. Let me get my super duper background back in place. And we're bringing you peace. We're bringing you light. And above all else, I'm encouraging you to unindoctrinate yourself.